This is the Everyday AI Show, the everyday podcast where we simplify AI and bring its power to your fingertips. Listen daily for practical advice to boost your career, business, and everyday life.
This podcast is supported by Google. Hey everyone, David here, one of the product leads for Google Gemini. Check out VO3, our state-of-the-art AI video generation model, in the Gemini app, which lets you create high-quality, 8-second videos with native audio generation. Try it with the Google AI Pro plan or get the highest access with the Ultra plan. Sign up at gemini.google to get started and show us what you create.
As someone that's been covering AI daily for almost 3 years, I feel I'm kind of able to spot trends before most people. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of fads and duds and hype in the AI world, and then there's some big splashes that amount to nothing. But there's been a recent tidal wave of momentum over the past 3 weeks in one area that I don't see fading, and that's agentic browsers. And not only do I think this isn't a fad, I actually think this is the future of work for most of us. And it requires a much different approach than we've been working with over the past 3 years since the generative AI boom. And that's why I think agentic AI browsers are the next frontier of artificial intelligence. So we're going to be talking about that and a lot more on today's episode of Everyday AI. What's going on, y'all? My name's Jordan Wilson, and welcome to Everyday AI. This is your daily, unedited, unscripted live stream podcast and free daily newsletter helping everyday business leaders like you, like me, not just keep up with all of these flurry of AI developments, but how we can make sense of it to leverage all of it to grow our companies and our careers. So if that's what you're trying to do, this is your new home. It starts here with the podcast and live stream, but if you really want to take it to the next level, you need to go to youreverydayai.com. There, sign up for the free daily newsletter where we will be recapping the biggest takeaways from today's show, as well as keeping you up to date with everything else you need to know in the world of AI. And you can go listen to now like 570 back episodes from some of the smartest people in the world, all for free, sorted by category on our website. So if you want the AI news, make sure to check today's newsletter for that. But let's get straight into it. And let's talk about agentic browsers and agentic AI in the browser and how I think this is actually going to be the default way that we work with today's large language models. All right, so here's my hot take. Yet this year, I think that agentic browsers will be more powerful and probably, maybe not by total number of users, but just by overall direction. I think it's going to be more popular as well than their AI chatbot counterparts. So what does that mean? As an example, we're going to be talking about it a little bit in today's episode. Perplexity. Perplexity came out with their very popular agentic AI browser called Comet. So what I'm saying is I think in 2025, Comet will probably have more upside, more momentum, and be more overall useful than its large language model front-end counterpart, Perplexity, right? So as an example, going to perplexity.com and using Perplexity as a chatbot or using it as an agentic AI browser inside the Perplexity Comet browser. So yeah, still in this year, I think it's going to be more popular, more commonplace, and more momentum behind developing these agentic browsers. And why? Well, once you start using them, you'll understand. But I think agentic AI browsers are all about action and task completion, whereas I think front-end chatbots are usually more about research, personalization, and content creation, right? But it still feels like there's a step to bring better data in before you get started, and then a couple of steps to make use of all of this content that you create in a front-end chatbot. So let's preview what we're going to go over the rest of today's show. So stick around, and I'm going to give you the 5 main advantages of AI browsers over front-end chatbots. I'm going to show you the recent momentum behind this movement from big tech, which makes this hot take, I would say, kind of undeniable. And then I'm going to preview some of the up-and-coming AI agentic browsers that are worth paying attention to. So why does this matter? All right, maybe you don't care. I don't care about agentic AI browsers, right? I like using, ChatGPT here or there. I like using Gemini or Claude, right? Uh, why does it matter? Well, internet browsing is habitual. It has become such an ingrained part. If you're a knowledge worker sitting in front of the computer, which I'm guessing that's like 99% of our audience, it is literally ingrained in your brain, these kind of old school processes. And I talk so much about unlearning, and how using a large language model, especially as they've grown in maturity and capabilities, with reasoning, being able to think through problems step by step, being able to agentically go through their tool use, right? I think you have to unlearn kind of these now automated ways that we work as humans. And I think one of the biggest culprits is just opening a browser and going about something the old way that you've always done. But I think the future of work is humans orchestrating large language models and agentic AI browsers, not just manually going through the tasks like we've been rewarded for many decades. And I think the other reason why this really matters now, developments are happening so fast, faster than the general generative AI space, which is actually hard to believe, but it is true. All right. So, also I'm curious, live stream audience, have you used an agentic AI browser yet? Um, there's a couple of them out. I'll say at least among the big names, probably one of the more popular ones is Perplexity's Comet. We've seen now some reports that said OpenAI is working on their browser, and their new ChatGPT agent, I think it's, essentially setting the groundwork for how it will work inside of a dedicated browser. But let me know, yes or no. Like, are you using agentic AI browsers right now? Like, yes, no, interested, not interested. Because I might end up doing a follow-up show maybe this Wednesday or next Wednesday, for putting AI to work on Wednesdays. So if this is something, yes, you're very interested in, yes, I care about it, yes, I'm using them, we'll probably schedule another couple shows. So please let me know. But now let's go over the 5 reasons why agentic browsers are the future of everyday AI use. Number 1, there's no middleman. All right. And I should probably zoom out a little bit and first explain the difference between agentic AI browsers and large language models. So I kind of already gave you an example of it, Perplexity versus Perplexity Comet. But essentially, you have your AI chatbots, right? That's what we all call them. That's going to a large language model on the front end. So there's front end and back end of large language models, right? Most of us are probably front end users. We go to chatgpt.com, gemini.google.com, claude.ai, whatever it is, and we log in. Right. And then there's back end development where you can work with APIs. We're not talking about that. So you have your front end AI chatbots, and then you have now a new category, agentic AI browsers. So in the example of Perplexities, which we'll talk about a little bit more, it's where you actually, instead of logging into perplexity.com, instead you download their browser. It's based on Chromium. So if you're a Chrome user, which I think most people are, it easily imports all of your data. And then it has this hybrid AI approach. So that's one of the big differentiators. And that's point number 1. There is no middleman. So when you log into a front end chatbot, it almost feels like an unneeded degree of separation between our data context and our end goal. Right. And I've been seeing that and realizing that more and more, both in the last, week or two, the more I've been using Perplexity's Comet, as I'm using ChatGPT's agent. I've been using Google's Mariner, which I'll talk about a little bit more. But the more I use more of these agentic browsers or agentic that have virtual computers, virtual desktops, the more I realize that working with large language models the traditional way doesn't always seem like the most intuitive, right? It almost seems like there's this degree of separation, this middleman. And I think that's one of the reasons why, with agentic browsers, why they're going to pick up in popularity. Reason number 2, direct access to logged in content. So I think you can, if you are a power user, right? So let's just say you're spending, 8 to 10 hours a day in large language models. That's not most of us, right? For me, that's a lot of my days sometimes. But I think you can actually save hours a day. And not only that, but get better results by having direct access via an agentic AI browser. So what that means is when you are logged in to an agentic browser, it just knows. It has access to all of your tabs opened, file sharing, copying and pasting is cut down. Um, like even just the traditional context window kind of goes out the window, right? Because you can still open multiple browse tabs in an agentic browser, but those tabs also serve as memory for your context, and also wherever you're logged in, which brings us to point number 3, richer context. So that's just in agentic browsers, you have much richer context for your tasks. So you can connect online through your browsing history, your emails, your web pages, PDFs, whatever you're reading, etc. All of those are instant context. So again, that saves you from having to, I need to open this. I need to open this file first, and then I need to download it, and then I need to upload it to the LLM. Oh, wait, this is the wrong format, or it's not reading something correctly, right? It's just so much faster and more intuitive to just be able to have that richer context available immediately. All right, let's go to reason number 4. It's just less duct tape, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm very bullish on these new agentic AI protocols. So what that means, and the easiest way to explain this that I've done before here on the show, websites have traditionally talked to each other via APIs, right? It's essentially a language that allows two different websites to be able to talk to each other, share data dynamically, update things on the back end without a human needing to be involved. So we have that now with AI, right? APIs didn't really work with AI and large language models. They needed their own language. So then we had the very popular Model Context Protocol, MCP, from Anthropic. We have Google's version of that, which is A2A, agent to agent, etc. So these are all great. Don't get me wrong. And they're all very much needed. I think with agentic AI browsers, there's just less duct tape. You don't need to set up and configure MCPs or agent-to-agent protocols. And, there's another half dozen of very popular now, essentially agentic AI languages that allow agents and large language models to talk to each other and share data in the background. So yes, I'm still bullish on that category. I still believe it's very much needed. But when you're using an agentic browser, you don't need any of that. You need to log into the websites that you need, right? And I gave this example when we did a Perplexity Comet show. I don't need to go into, as an example, our podcast is hosted on Buzzsprout. We use Beehive for our newsletter. We have Google Analytics data for our website, right? All of these different things. Generally, what I would have to do is log into all those systems. Then I would have to download all of this data. I'd have to make sure it's in the right format, make sure it's all clean data. Then I would have to make sure it's in a format and upload it to a certain large language model, right? And if I really wanted to just take it further agentically, then I would have to, configure an MCP server for one of those avenues, right? If I wanted dynamic, easy access. But there's less duct tape with a browser, with an agentic browser. If you're logged in, you don't need to do all of those things. It is automatically able to access your dynamic data. Is it slower? Absolutely. Is it more stable? Probably, right? And we've seen so far over the last couple of months with the explosion of the Model Context Protocol, there's also been a surgence of problematic MCPs as well, right? Some phishing scams, all of these things. So as something gets popular way too quickly, the bad actors capitalize on that as well. So yes, I understand, this less duct tape approach in a browser might be much slower, but I do think ultimately it requires less tech know-how. And for personal use, right, if I have to choose between an agentic AI browser versus configuring an MCP, I mean, it obviously depends on the use case, right? But in many instances, I'm just going to go for the one that's in the browser. All right, and then reason number 5 that I think agentic AI browsers are going to potentially overtake using large language models on the front end is it's just faster, right? And so I know this goes against the MCP example, right? So what I'm saying right now is a lot of these right now, virtual, right? So let's talk about Operator, OpenAI's Operator. It's very powerful. It's very slow, right? You have to log in on the front end. It's actually operator.chatgpt.com, right? And it essentially uses computer vision and it kind of takes screenshots to navigate around the web, right? So if you're trying to do something around navigating around the web, it can actually be hard by using these more agentic features of a front end large language model. I know we're getting a little tricky there. That's why, and kind of walking a tight line here. But I think the easiest example is to talk about Operator. It's very powerful, right? But it's extremely slow, right? But when you bring in agentic AI, you're moving everything on browser, right? So it's almost like you have this hybrid approach where for basic and much needed things, you're able to process those like in the browser, kind of like with Edge AI, right? If you have an AI chip on your smartphone, if you have an NPU AI chip, right, in your computer, something like that, it's certain things are faster because you don't have to send every single process to the cloud. So that's another huge advantage, is just having that on-device speed. And the big tech momentum on this is undeniable. All right. But before we get to that, a word from our partners.
This podcast is supported by Google. Hi, folks. Paige Bailey here from the Google DeepMind DevRel team. For our developers out there, we know there's a constant trade-off between model intelligence, speed, and cost. Gemini 2.5 Flash aims right at that challenge. It's got the speed you expect from Flash, but with upgraded reasoning power. And crucially, we've added controls like setting thinking budgets, so you can decide how much reasoning to apply, optimizing for latency and costs. So try out Gemini 2.5 Flash at aistudio.google.com and let us know what you build.
So the momentum around agentic browsers from big tech companies is undeniable. And I'm looking here, everything on my list except for some of these agentic browser pieces from Google, the rest of these have really developed over the last 2 weeks, right? So the first, and I think one of the more impressive, is actually Perplexity's Comet. So we did do a dedicated show on that, but let me just give you a little bit of information. So this is, again, agentic AI in the browser. It does have that hybrid AI architecture. So it kind of cuts out the middleman of an AI chatbot and everything is happening in the browser. And we did go over just about a week and a half ago in episode 568, we went over 5 business use cases. So again, I would say for most arguments, Perplexity is probably a top 5, top 10, AI company, depending on what you're looking at. So again, they are hats off to them. After, 6 months ago, I said they're going to have to hard pivot or they're going to get squashed. And they are leading, I say, the pack, at least in getting a truly agentic AI browser to market. All right, next, OpenAI's ChatGPT agent. So yes, this is still, you're using it on the front end on the large language model, but hear me out. Because it has its own virtual browser. That's the key here. ChatGPT's agent, it operates by essentially launching its own virtual computer. And on that virtual computer, it uses a virtual browser. And I talked about eventually OpenAI will have its own browser. It's been reported. And we talked about that with the reporter from Reuters who broke that story in episode 565, if you want to go back and listen to that. So the ChatGPT agent uses its own virtual computer, including virtual desktop, virtual browser, etc. And it combines deep research, operator, terminal access, and some new capabilities, right? And I do assume that probably at some point this summer, we'll see OpenAI's browser. It's been reported by just about every single outlet that they're going to be releasing a browser based on Google's Chromium, which FYI, Perplexity Comet is based on Google's Chromium. OpenAI's ChatGPT agent based on Google's Chromium, right? So that's their kind of open source version of Chrome. And hey, here's one other company going agentic in the browser based on Google's Chromium. One of their biggest competitors, Microsoft, with their Edge browser. All right. And there is a pretty interesting update that just dropped days ago to Microsoft Edge and their Copilot Vision feature within Edge. So I won't say that Edge is a fully fully agentic AI browser. But over the last few months, and especially this update last week, they are bringing more and more agentic capabilities to the Edge browser. So one is just Copilot Vision. So that's Microsoft's AI tool that can analyze and assist with content shown on your screen. So the July 2025 update lets it view any app or window on your desktop that you choose, not just Microsoft Edge. So that one is pretty cool there. So obviously you can use Copilot Vision and it can understand and interact with anything on your screen. But then to be able to bring your desktop into it, I think starts to build a more cohesive agentic workflow. Also, you can control what Copilot sees, making it easier to get context-aware help with anything on your desktop. And like I said, it's based on Chromium. And now the quiet leader in the space, I don't think Google has the best product when it comes to agentic AI. But the thing I'm thinking of, okay, the three other big leaders that I just talked about, they're all using Google Chromium. So I have to believe it's going to be any month now that Google is going to come in with a huge update, whether it's to their Chrome product, whether it's to their Project Manager, which we're going to talk about, or Project Mariner, which we're going to talk about live or now, or maybe their Gemini assistant, their in-browser assistant. But you have to believe Google is probably going to be striking back. But they already have, like I said, 2 or 3 different versions of agentic browsing already going on. So one is with Project Mariner. So unfortunately, Project Mariner, I think, is only rolled out to some trusted testers and then to people on their Gemini Ultra plan, which is something that I pay for, obviously. So I've been able to use Project Mariner. So if you don't know, here's what Project Mariner is and some of its agentic capabilities. So it's a virtual browser, right? So it's kind of weird. It's like a browser in a browser, just like Operator. So it's not truly agentic at the core yet, because this is more of a service within that you would use while logged into Google Chrome. So it agentically browses the web. One unique feature that I really love with Google's Project Mariner is it has the teach a task mode, where essentially you can share a tab, you can talk to Project Mariner, go do a bunch of series of actions, and then it learns it and can repeat it, which is amazing. I hope that all other agentic browsers have something like that. Also, Google does have a Gemini assistant in browser. I don't think a lot of people know about that, but it's just in the upper right-hand corner. So pretty cool. Also, I think that Chrome/Google/Chromium holds the key here, right? Because Comet and Edge and OpenAI's browsers are all going to be based on Chromium. So I am expecting something big from Google in this regard when it comes to agentic browsers. They have the feelers out there. They're getting data and feedback from their trusted testers. They're putting out some different agentic capabilities in different parts of their kind of suite of products. So I would expect something big from Google probably before 2025. All right, so there you have it. The biggest companies, at least, are going all in and now, right? Aside from Google, which I think most of those developments were announced in March and April. But aside from that, everything else has been over the last week or two. So the momentum that we've seen from Microsoft, from OpenAI, and from Perplexity, and now from a lot of these startup contenders is going absolutely bonkers. Okay. So now, last but not least, let's talk about some up and coming agentic browsers that are worth keeping an eye on. So first is the Fellow AI browser. So this is an agentic AI browser featuring a deep action workflow that automates cross-site multi-step tasks in shadow windows. It's built on the Eco framework, enabling customizable agentic workflows via natural language or JavaScript language as code. And it can access both public and password protected sites. That's important to generate comprehensive reports or perform research. Then we have Neon from Opera. So Opera is one of the, kind of second tier, I would say, leaders in the browser wars, right? So you have, Google Chrome, and then everyone based off Google Chrome. You have Firefox, you have Safari, and then that I would say is tier one. And then tier two, I think Opera, Brave, and others are right there in the mix. So now we are having more of these agentic offerings. So this is different than their normal Opera browser. So Opera Neon is a new experimental agentic AI browser offering different modes labeled chat, do, and make to autonomously code websites, generate games, fill forms, and also book travel. So it's kind of like half large language model, half agentic browser with Neon. So that does require a paid subscription like so many of these do, and it's waitlisted right now, but it integrates contextual AI to perform offline tasks without switching apps or tabs. So some pretty unique features in Opera's Neon. Next, we have another Chromium-based offering, which I think is probably been one of the more popular agentic browsing startups, and that's Dia. So this is from the browser company. They've kind of gone all in on Dia after a pivot themselves. So Dia chats with open tabs, rewrites or translates text inline, and also helps plan tasks. It can also route your queries through a skills system that selects the best LLM or tool for each task. And it also leverages local browser cookies and encryption to access logged in sites safely for contextual assistance. That's one of the biggest advantages, as you can see, right? I'm bullet pointing some of the features of these more startup agentic browsers. One of the biggest things is like, hey, once you log in and it stores that via cookies, you don't have to log in, right? Let's just say there's 10 sites, right? I kind of give you my example, right? We use Buzzsprout for distribution. I check Spotify for our podcast stats. I check Apple Podcasts for our podcast stats, Google Analytics for our traffic, Google Search Console. I track, everything in Beehive. That's for our free email, daily email newsletter. So I have like 10 or so websites that I'm constantly logging into almost every day, right? Our YouTube analytics, all of these things. With these agentic AI browsers, Dia, all these others that I mentioned that have this logged in state, that's what's so great about it. You don't have to, set up and monitor, custom MCP servers or wait, maybe months or years for, a connector to come to one of these services if they are more niche. So just think of all those websites that you constantly log into. Right? That's the big advantage of these agentic AI browsers, is being able to take advantage of that logged in sites and to be able to go on its own, right? You can just kind of work out a prompt that says, all right, go visit these 10 sites, pull all my stats, go look at my email, and then give me a plan for the day, right? Oh, if you're, if a certain KPI that you're tracking has been tanking the last week, okay, an agentic browser can go through and know that, and then it can go see if there's any emails, any open conversations about what that stat or what maybe caused that spike or drop. So that's a huge part. And I do think right now you still have to, depending on the browser you're talking about, you do have to, get a little bit back into the prompt engineering side of things, right? If you do want something super autonomous and impressive. But I think in the short run, agentic AI browsers are just about giving you better results in less time than a large language model. And then last but not least, this one has a little bit of an asterisk because it's not technically a browser, but I think I have to still mention Manus. So they do have a cloud browser. So I would love to see Manus bring an actual browser out. We'll see. But this is more of one of the more popular agentic AI platforms. But recently they have launched a cloud browser, which is why I think, okay, this is close enough that we should probably include it in the agentic browsers to keep an eye on. So it's a general AI agent, very much like ChatGPT agents. That turns thoughts into actions, autonomously executing complex tasks across work and life domains without continuous human prompts. It's built on multi-agent architecture. That's pretty cool, using Claude 3.5 Sonnet and Qwen models. So Manus is from a Chinese product, so it uses Qwen and some other models. There's 29 specialized tools, including browser use for web automation. And then, like I said, it does have a cloud browser. And the reason why I think it's better to have a local browser, but a cloud browser, I think, will still suffice if you want agentic browsing, because the biggest thing is, again, keeping that login state so you can have it go, check your email, check whatever, piece of software that's very important for your day-to-day work. So being able to continue those tasks independently, via the logged in state, via the cloud browser. All right. So that was a lot of information in a short amount of time. So let's just recap. And let me just make one more case why I think that agentic AI in the browser is the next frontier of artificial intelligence, and why you and your company need to be paying attention. If I'm being honest, front-end chatbots, yes, they're great. Yes, they're going to continue to be developed. Yes, I'm going to talk about them every day on this show. But that's yesteryear's technology. I do think that all these developments that we're seeing right now in front-end chatbots, right? That's chatgpt.com, gemini.google.com, claude.ai, copilot.microsoft.com, right? These are all, for the most part, many of these features are going to end up in the browsers. And I think agentic browsers are the future. We can't ignore the facts, the receipts, the writing on the wall, the momentum, all the big tech companies and startups getting behind this movement. And like I said, the progress in this space is currently outpacing large language model development, which nothing outpaces large language model development. Y'all, I cover this every single day for almost 3 years. Large language models have been developed and innovated and iterated upon faster than probably any technology we've ever seen. And I think, especially over the last couple of weeks, the momentum behind the agentic browser space, both from big tech and startup companies, it is undeniable. It is strong, and it is not going to stop, because every big tech company is investing in agentic browsers. And I do think it's that major missing link between the potential of large language models and what business leaders like you and I actually need. We need actions, we need observability, and we actually need task completion. And I think that's what agentic AI will deliver on. And remember, today's versions, not good, right? But think back to the first time you used a chatbot, right? Think back to the first time you used Bard, and then think of how good Gemini 2.5 Pro is. Think of the first time that you used, ChatGPT 3.5, and then think of how good the models are now. Think of how good these agentic browsers are going to be. And I will end by saying this. If you're not experimenting weekly with agentic browsers, you will quickly fall behind. All right. I hope this was helpful, y'all. If it was, please let me know. Reach out in the show notes for the podcast, which I would love it if you would subscribe, leave us a rating on the podcast, but always leave information to reach out to me. Also, if you are listening on the podcast and you want to watch the video, there wasn't too much on the video side today, but we always have that in there as well. So thank you for tuning in. If this was helpful, please tell someone about it, and then go to youreverydayai.com. There, we're going to be recapping the highlights from today's show, as well as keeping you up to date with everything you need to be the smartest person in AI at your company or in your department. So thank you for tuning in. Hope to see you back tomorrow and every day for more Everyday AI. Thanks, y'all.
This podcast is supported by Google. Hey everyone, David here, one of the product leads for Google Gemini. If you dream it and describe it, VO3 and Gemini can help you bring it to life as a video. Now with incredible sound effects, background noise, and even dialogue. Try it with the Google AI Pro plan or get the highest access with the Ultra plan. Sign up at gemini.google to get started and show us what you create.
And that's a wrap for today's edition of Everyday AI. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave us a rating. It helps keep us going. For a little more AI magic, visit youreverydayai.com and sign up to our daily newsletter so you don't get left behind. Go break some barriers, and we'll see you next time.